comrades, give a very warm and solidarity-filled welcome to Ruth Coppinger, TD from Ireland.
Thanks, comrades. As Sarah said, it's been a great month of Saturdays in Ireland. 3 weeks ago, 100,000 people took to the streets of Dublin. 1 week ago, 200,000, I estimate, took part in round about 100 protests all around the country, in every corner of Ireland, even Sarah's mother's hometown. And yesterday, the headline in the main newspaper, the Irish Independent, is "Water Meter Works Cancelled." Things are far from over, comrades, obviously, but how did this happen? How did it happen that the country, which was the poster boys and girls for austerity, for EU, IMF and Troika compliance, suddenly would decide to disobey their parents and come out onto the streets in such numbers? Well, rarely does the Irish Independent sum up the situation, but I'll tell you what they said. This is about so much more than water charges now. This is a pent-up reaction, gushing out against the double-dealing, greed, arrogance, cronyism and downright stupidity of an unfit for purpose political system. That's not from the Socialists, that's from Martina Devlin, a columnist with the Irish Independent, and it just sums it up perfectly. Now, to put things into perspective about the scale of what's taken place in Ireland, 100,000 people in Dublin, population of Dublin's 1.1 million. Translate that to London, that's 800,000 people on the streets of London. Further add into the equation, there was no posters for this march. It wasn't supported by the Irish Congress of Trade Unions. In fact, the main trade union leader in the country was busy scurrying around with the government at the time looking for a concession on the water charges. It was organised through social media. It was promoted by an umbrella group called Right to Water, which includes two trade unions, Unite and Mandate. They're not the biggest unions in Ireland. And small parties, including the Anti-Austerity Alliance and the Socialist Party. This was a spontaneous uprising from below. I never thought I'd see such a thing, but that's what it was, and comrades need to bear that in mind. In my own area, Blanchardstown, where obviously myself and Joe are the TDs, the stops were pulled out. We had a march of 5,000 people in Blanchardstown alone. And when you consider there was other marches in the city centre, which a lot of people wanted to go into, they wanted to be in a bigger march, not in the local march, that's an unbelievable. It's the biggest march in the history of Blanchardstown's existence. There's been no other thing that's bigger. Now, it's a long way from what was only 1 year ago the prevailing mood in the country. People were down. You could say somewhat demoralised. The first water meter protests were actually installed in my own area. We made attempts. We had 4 protests. We didn't really get sufficient response, so we discontinued having them and focused on when the bills would be coming. In fact, the nickname for the Irish people among protesters who were frustrated at the apparent lack of a response to 6 years of austerity was that they were sheep, who do what they're told, who follow what they're told by their masters. And the seeming failure, not quite true because there were protests, but there was no lead given to expand them, obviously. The seeming failure to respond to a 6-year austerity onslaught led to very frustration among people. But what has been so important for us to recognise is that in the past year, all of the boasts of the establishment that we're now in a recovery has actually played a role in the current protest movement. Because, yes, we do have still, it's somewhat of a contradictory recovery with the biggest housing emergency in the history of the country. I have 3 cases, I'll tell you, just on my own books. One woman has put up a tent in her neighbour's garden in the Blanchardstown area. Another young woman had a caesarean section birth and was discharged into a travel lodge with her other 4 children. A man in his 60s visited my office the other day. He's diabetes, arthritis, and he goes to the airport to sleep at night. That's how horrific their recovery is for ordinary people. True, there has been an uplift. The wealth at the top has risen by 12% during the recession. The top 1% own 20% of the wealth. But the talk of recovery has actually opened up a space for people. It's opened up a space that the dilemma for the establishment, the more they keep saying there's a recovery, well then the more people will question, why are you bringing in another austerity measure, the water charges? And this is the dilemma that they have on their hands. How do they talk up the gains of austerity and then risk, having to bring in more? People are questioning, well, where's my recovery? Now, as has been said, this isn't just about the water charges. This is also about corruption, betrayal by the Labour Party in particular, who argued a number of years ago they had to go into a coalition in order to protect workers. They were going to save us from the extremes of paying back the bondholders. They would defend workers, but instead they did the exact opposite. Scotland should take note, and the SNP as well. The Socialist Party argued that there would be a break in the situation. But as I said, there has been a lot of frustration, a growth in populism of both left and right, an anti-party mood in many cases, the growth of says no groups, which are, march very consistently, protest, don't really put forward much of a political alternative. And there's been a huge vacuum because we need a new party for working class people. Who represents the 100,000 and the 200,000 who took to the streets? The answer is nobody. Is it Sinn Féin, who I'll go on to in a minute? Now, the Socialist Party argued last year, when we were involved in the campaign against the property tax, which was another austerity tax, we argued that the activists in that campaign should challenge for seats in the local and European elections in May, take on the austerity parties on a political sphere as well. We argued for a broad umbrella of the groups that were involved in that campaign to do that. We argued the field shouldn't be left clear for Sinn Féin to just ride on the anti-austerity mood that was in society. Sinn Féin aren't a left party. They're involved in imposing austerity in Northern Ireland. They espouse, though, very clever anti-austerity slogans. And unfortunately, other groups, including Socialist Workers' Party, argued against that and played off an anti-political party mood that was there in society to argue against it. But nevertheless, activists did join us on that project, and it's led to the setting up earlier this year of the Anti-Austerity Alliance, which went on to stand 40 candidates in the elections, won 14 council seats, which I think is an amazing achievement. Same day as the local elections, we also won the by-election in Dublin West. On October the 11th, the same day as the massive march, the Anti-Austerity Alliance won its first Member of Parliament in the election of Paul Murphy. So in other words, we've taken on Sinn Féin twice and won this year, and it can be done. And the idea of others on the left that they should be given a soft ride and not be challenged has been broken twice this year. Comrades, we've 3 TDs, MPs in Parliament who are Socialist Party members. Joe and Paul are both here as well. And it does allow us to play a key role in the anti-austerity movement and in the left generally, but also on social issues, not just economic issues. Last week, the Socialist Party organised an important event called the Abortion Pill Train, where we led a movement to go to Belfast to import banned abortion pills. And we will continue to highlight the ongoing ban on abortion, which is a medieval, anti-woman amendment that was put into our constitution by the Catholic lobby, in 1983, before most women who are giving birth, who are childbearing age, even had a vote. So we will continue to challenge on all of those social issues the legacy of the Catholic Church having such a dominance over health and education in Ireland, which I think is very important for socialists to play a role on those issues as well. Finish, comrades, the media won't be too long in noticing our influence. We've been all over the Irish media, but this is just one article yesterday in the Irish Independent, hard left to depth at exploiting fury at water charges, but in power they'd be a disaster. So you can see the way that things are going to go. But it won't really, obviously, I think, have any effect. Comrades, there was an interview done just after Paul won the by-election, and it was put to the main opposition party, Fianna Fáil. They're a right-wing opposition party. You've won no by-elections. How come Joe Higgins has managed to win 2? I think although the anti-austerity alliance is small, it's a very important step on building a new movement to create a new working class party that will take up all of the aspirations of the people who marched on those marches, and will play a key role, obviously, in fighting the water charges, is the dominant issue at the moment. It's incumbent on socialists to take initiatives, in my opinion, that will cut across the growth of populism, of nationalism, of racism even, the likes of UKIP and what we're seeing in other countries, to try to educate and develop people that we're working with in campaigns, and to persuade them of the need to get involved in politics, to change the political order, and to join the fight for socialism. Thanks, comrades.